Welcome everyone! I am really excited to put this video together, as many people don't know how important New York, especially this place here on Long Island, was to the beginning of aviation. Mankind had dreamed about flying since the ancient times, from tying feathers and trying to mimic birds, to jumping off high structures with various contraptions tied to them, to kites, and eventually hot air balloons and gliders. But it wasn't until 1903 that the Wright brothers finally were able to perform a controlled flight in North Carolina, and quickly after that, enthusiasts and inventors raced to break records and fly faster, longer, and higher than anyone before them. And this location here in Garden City, Long Island, played an enormous role in bringing about what is called the Golden Age of Aviation in the 1920s and 30s. It is this place that used to be the center of aviation, which attracted people from all over the world. However, the field closed in 1951, and 5 years later, a shopping mall opened in its place, the Roosevelt Field Mall, which has been expanding ever since, becoming one of the biggest malls in the United States. But most people shopping here do not realize that they are standing on the grounds of where many of the first airplanes and pilots used to stand, from where hundreds were trained to be pilots during World War I, from where the first mail in America was delivered by planes, and also from here, Charles Lindbergh flew solo non-stop across the Atlantic Ocean. And more broadly, it was Long Island which for many years was the leader in aviation, from building one of the most iconic airplanes of the 20th century, like for example the F-14 Tomcats, or putting together the lunar modules which allowed humans to land on the moon. Oh yes, that was here as well. This location was originally called Hazelhurst Field. However, in 1919 it was renamed Roosevelt Field in honor of Quentin Roosevelt, who was the youngest son of President Theodore Roosevelt, who was the President of the United States from 1901 to 1909. Quentin was a pilot who died in 1918 while serving in France during World War I. Speaking of World War I, America entered the war in 1917. The Army needed more room to train pilots and experiment with airplanes. Hence, in addition to the Roosevelt Field, they leased land next door, which was later named Mitchell Field. It was named in honor of a former New York City mayor, John Mitchell, who was also killed in his plane while training in Louisiana. Hence, Mitchell Field was a military airfield until 1961, when it was decommissioned. But if you walk around, you can still see some signs of the past, like for example the railroad tracks, which would be essential for connecting the airfield with the rest of Long Island, as there were many producers of military aircraft at that time, such as Grumman or Lockheed Martin. There are still some remaining buildings, like former hangars for instance, and military housing. And if you walk around, you see many scattered things which date back to the former days of this being an active military airfield. In fact, this trip and making the YouTube video inspired me to look a bit more into the archives and photos from the 1950s and 60s in order to have a better understanding of what was here and where. Hence, in the summer, when I have a bit more time, it's one of the things I would like to do, and who knows, maybe I will find something cool and original and make another video about it. But we also have the Museums Row, where some of the buildings and hangars are still not restored and are projects for the future, but some are. To the left, we have the Long Island's Children's Museum. So if you have small kids, it's a really fun place to visit. And I actually have been here a few years ago just out of curiosity, and I mean, I don't think it is something that will fit this channel, but hey, if there's going to be a demand to see me blow big bubbles, play in the sand, or be a conductor of a toy train, I mean, why not? I could release my inner child for a few hours. But more realistically, we also have the restored hangar number 2, which is the Firefighters Museum. A really interesting place and something I would really love to show you in the future on this channel. But for now, our focus is the Cradle of Aviation Museum. It is here, my dear friends, that our journey takes us. And I asked, and I was lucky enough to get the permission. So a big thanks to the staff of the museum for allowing me to do this video. And so let me show you what are some of the things that will await you once you enter this place. However, when it comes to this video, just like with the Intrepid Museum and the recent posting that I did, I will split this museum into 2 parts. For this week, I am focusing on the beginning of aviation up to World War II, so like the 1940s. And then next week, we will continue our journey with aviation as we enter the jet age and space travel. So don't forget to tune in. What really amazes me looking at the first airplanes, such as this one, is how brave these first aviators were. Well, some might call them foolish. The truth is, sometimes the line between being foolish and being brave is hard to see. But still, to sit in some contraption like this and say, yeah, this looks good, let's fly. Few pieces of wood connected together with some fabric, a small little engine, what could possibly go wrong? If you think this is crazy, then trust me, you have not seen anything yet, as some of these earlier attempts at flight are just quite wild. But without that thinking and those guts, we would not have what we have today with aviation. It all had to start somewhere. This plane, for instance, was the Balanca, named after Giuseppe Balanca, who built his first plane in Italy in 1909, but then came to New York as he saw greater opportunity here. And in 1911, he built this plane, which was enough for him to open his own flight school and then expand his vision further. For instance, building this plane, which was the first enclosed plane built in the United States, putting aviation a step closer to commercial flight. But this is a great example of the significance of Roosevelt Field, where this plane operated from. Roosevelt Field was not just a popular location for people from New York testing out their designs, but it was very quickly becoming like a magnet, attracting people from all over the world. People like Giuseppe, some of whom created flight schools near Roosevelt Field. Some operated their businesses from New York City, and some came here to show off their designs or see others and what they are up to. And so quickly, Roosevelt Field really did become a cradle of aviation. Not all innovation took place in experiments high in the sky. Some took place on solid ground. For instance, take a look at this bicycle, which has a propeller attached in the back. This was a creation of William Pickering from 1909. He realized that if he pedaled at a constant speed, then different shaped propellers made him move at different speeds. Hence, eventually, after testing various shapes of propellers, he picked the one which gave him the fastest speed. And it's actually one of the earliest experiments in propeller design. Then we have this plane, the Vin Fizz, which in 1911 was the first plane to fly across the United States from coast to coast, from New York City to California. And it only took 49 days. Hey, we had to start somewhere. Or this plane, created by Glenn Curtiss in 1909. It flew 25 miles here on Long Island before settling to the ground. In 1909, that was an unbelievable record in terms of setting the distance. It is actually part of the reason why stunts like these made Long Island, and especially Roosevelt Field, the center of aviation. The wheel controls the rudder in the back, which controls the yaw, or essentially the plane going left or right. And to control the pitch, meaning to go up or down, you control it here in the front by pushing the wheel. We even have Harriet Quimby, who was the first American woman to be licensed as a pilot in 1911. Unfortunately, she will later be killed in an aviation accident, being only in her 30s. Aside from the history of aviation, the museum also slips in other interesting items onto the displays, like these aerial cameras from the 1920s and 30s. Or cars, which of course I love, like this one from 1912. Or a Buick from 1940, which I still need to add to my collection. My die-cast model car collection. You know, the ones that you buy for like $10, $15, not the real ones. Or this cool full-ton truck, which was, by the way, also built here on Long Island. Therefore, you do not have to be interested in only airplanes to really appreciate this museum. You can then also step inside of a workshop of World War I airplane, where there's just so much to look at. Not only the exposed plane itself and its frame, but also the tools, the engines, the bombs. It's just really such an interesting display. Oh, which includes a Lewis machine gun, which is a type of a machine gun which would be mounted to airplanes during World War I. In fact, the war itself really changed aviation, transforming airplanes from really like a sport and experimentation into a serious military technology with a rapid change in tactics, design, engine development. The role of an airplane really changed a lot in just a very short time period. In the beginning of the war, 1914, the plane was mostly used for delivering messages and observing the enemy, for instance, and their positions. While at the end of the war, 1918, the plane was used as a true instrument of war, dropping bombs on targets below and using its machine guns to fight with other airplanes high in the sky. You can view many other models of different airplanes displayed, like even this one, which is actually one of my favorites. It's a Soviet plane that made a journey across the Atlantic Ocean in 1929 from Moscow in Russia to New York. Here is the Spirit of St. Louis, the plane that Charles Lindbergh used to cross the Atlantic Ocean by himself without stopping in 1927, from Roosevelt Field to Paris, France, in about 33 hours and 30 minutes. This here is an example of an early mail plane. The first airmail began here on Long Island from Garden City to Minola, which is right next door to Garden City. But what happened is that the pilot would pre-arrange to drop the mail in a spot close to the post office, and the plane never even landed. But those were really sort of the beginnings of even delivering mail from one location to another by planes. And then from the beginnings of aviation, you will enter the next section of the museum, which is the time period of World War II and the late 1930s and 1940s. And at this point, the aircraft technology developed even further. You can even try to land a plane on an aircraft carrier. Okay, I will not show you the rest because I so landed that plane on my first try. Perfect landing. Yep. Fine. I crashed into the ocean. The second time I crashed into the carrier, but I did land on my third try. And there's even an example of a nuclear bomb, 10 kilotons, so just a little less than the one which was used against the city of Hiroshima in Japan at the end of World War II. But with nuclear bombs, we are now entering the Cold War and the jet age. And that is something I would like to show you in the second part for next week. So I hope you come back and finish this walking tour along with me, as it will take us out of this world. Literally. You'll see what I mean. Till then, be safe out there, and I will see you soon.